Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talk About Sports on ADSN. Today, we're here at the XCalibur Pit School in Mooresville, North Carolina. I'm Alan Dietz, along with Pedro Martinez Jr., Jeff Taylor, and, of course, William Wilson down on the end. And you hear pit stop practice that's going on right behind us here this afternoon, and it's definitely exciting. It's got us all pumped up. And, Pedro, last week, you were actually down at Daytona pitting for David Gilliland, and y'all came home with a top 15 finish.
Yes, actually, it was a pretty cool moment always. And at the Daytona 500, you finished top 20. That's great because you missed the big wrecks and everything. It's a good points race. It just overall was a really good day for us. You know, small team actually too. So them being top 15, I'd say that's a big plus.
Well, there's going to be a lot of XCalibur Pit School guys down at Atlanta this weekend, and we're going to talk to Pedro more about that. Before we do get started, though, we want to remember our captain of this ship, Kevin Casey. Kevin had a death in the family this week, and want to send our thoughts and prayers out to him. I know it's been a tough week for them, and we look forward to having him back on Talking About Sports soon. And I know one thing he was very happy with, guys, is that car that finished in second place in the Daytona 500, Darrell Wallace Jr. But before we get started all about that, Jeff, what were your thoughts on what we saw at Daytona this weekend?
Well, as we're getting ready for the show, we kind of talked about it. It was kind of a great race and a not-so-great race. The racing itself was fantastic. It was exciting, to watch from lap 1 to lap 200. A lot of passing, but unfortunately we had the wrecks. And we wrecked a lot of nice race cars and a lot of guys who could have been at the front of the pack. So, that was my take. It was a great race, not so great, but the racing I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was great racing. It was overly aggressive. They were too aggressive too soon.
I agree.
The youth showed. These guys, there were a lot of young guys. It's the youngest field we've ever had in a Daytona 500, and it showed every minute. You can't have these guys, they were racing like it was 10 laps to go, 10 laps into the race.
One of the things that I posted on Facebook after the race was I thought that the end of that race was about as low and as cheap as you could get as far as what happened with Austin Dillon. And there's a couple of ways that I look at that. You can't let off. It is the last lap for the Daytona 500. But at least the way that I saw it, he had a lane he could have crossed over, and he could have went right under Almirola and cleared him going into turn 3. From what you guys see, and I'm going to start from William and work down, what did you think about how the race ended?
I think it was horrible. I'm with you. That was an unnecessary wreck. You're in the top field in the series. You're supposed to be the top, the best of the best. If somebody spun Austin Dillon out like that, he would be pissed and he would still be mad today. So he can't sit there and say, oh, well, that's just racing. No, that's not racing. If you bump somebody, move them out of the way, that's racing. If you just wreck somebody because it's Daytona, that's no excuse. I think there was a horrible way to win a race. There was no class in it. There's no decency in it. Now, I don't think Austin's a bad guy. I don't think he's a dirty racer. I just think the moment got to be too much for him. He forgot about the class up, and all he saw was checkered flags, and he just was so focused on going forward, he never thought about doing it the right way.
He even said after the race, I could have lifted.
Or I could have lifted and given it to him.
And that's, when you go back and watch it, and I went back and watched the end, you're right. That lane to the left, he had so much momentum to drop to the left, to getting the push he was getting. He could have easily gotten underneath them.
And cleared it. What he was going to do was it was like a slide job that you'd see in sprint car race. He was going to go down to the bottom. He was going to go up and clear him, and he would have had Almirola covered. Now, whatever came on the inside would have been a different story, but he would have had plenty of room to block that. Pedro, being with a smaller team like you guys were, I don't want to say that you guys were in a similar situation to Eric Almirola, but Eric's only won one race, and I'll give it to him. After that race, he didn't whine and cry about what happened.
Just when we talk about like no class, that was the pure example of class. Would you agree, Pedro, with what he said? The media is right there, and he just said, hey, he didn't blame Austin. He didn't say anything about Austin. He just kind of, took it as it was.
Yeah, but you know what I also think is part of the problem, too? His spotter should have told him. Dylan's spotter should have told him, go low, should have directed him around that to keep that kind of thing from happening. Your spotters, they're your eyes in the sky. Someone should have told him, hey, clear low, go around and come around, finish this clean, let's not have controversy. Make this something it's going to be special, it's going to be wonderful, it's going to be a monumental occasion. Don't give yourself anything to have an asterisk on it anywhere along. His spotter should have protected him.
It just comes to the bottom point where it's a Daytona 500 and everybody wants to win the Daytona 500, and he just, he won Daytona 500, but
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you got to look at it that, I mean, it is the Daytona 500. Are all bets off, and we're going to go racing. But it would have been interesting to see had it been, would Darrell Walsh Jr. have done the same thing? Would Denny Hamlin would have done the same thing?
And I've got to say, I think Fox at the end of that race, from a TV standpoint, they kind of dropped the ball. They needed to talk a little bit more, I think, about how he won that race, as opposed to, I think they sort of sugarcoated something that maybe wasn't quite as rosy as it needed to be. But changing the subject just a little bit, what kind of grade would you give Alex Bowman? He started on the pole in the 88 car. How do you think he fared coming out of Daytona?
I think he did a good job. He got caught up in stuff that wasn't his fault, but he did what you expected Alex Bowman to do. I think we spent too much time acting like these guys, it's not like these guys just walk off the street and started racing. They've been doing this his whole life. He did what he was supposed to do.
I'd give him a B. And what I got to thinking about though was the twins when the Can-Ams. He dropped to the back.
Totally wasted opportunity.
And that's, would he have had a better showing had he gotten up there, mixed it up a little bit, got a little more with what the car was doing in traffic, and instead he said, no, let's protect the race car, drop to the back. That, I think, hurt him when it came to the 500.
I look at it two different ways, because Alex, not a rookie also, but he's also a rookie and better equipment that he's driven before. And absolutely. I don't believe that he's always had the experience of always driving top 5, top 10, and let's look at Jimmy Johnson, what happened with the twins, And I believe that he protected his car because he didn't want to be the Jimmy Johnson of the race.
Yeah. But the difference in that is, like you said, he's driving the best equipment he's ever driven. You're getting ready for the Daytona 500. You need to know how to deal with the Daytona 500. You need to know how to race in the Daytona 500. Riding around the back, keep it safe so you don't mess up your car, doesn't teach you experience, doesn't give you that in-race, in-game. Because up to this point, until, he never really drove in race trim and race conditions until the Daytona 500. When he had a whole race, if he'd have wrecked, so be it. He'd have learned something to not do, but he could have learned some things and some tricks. He'd have found out who he could draft with, who he can't draft with, how to lead in the front, how to get in the front, how to maintain a lead, how to block in real conditions, because these are the equipment he's never had before. He could have learned something. It was a wasted opportunity.
Folks, we're going along here, and we got a lot more to cover on the Daytona 500, and looking forward to Atlanta Motor Speedway coming up this weekend. We're live here on ADSN at XCalibur Pit School in Mooresville, North Carolina. More on Talk About Sports coming up next.
You was grind time, yeah. I never switch sides. Worry about me and mine. I'm about to beat you guys to the finish line. Said I'm prime time, yeah. You working part time, and I'm ready anytime. I can just look at you and tell. I got a kingdom to get. I cannot build it with you was grind time, yeah. I never switch sides. Worry about me and mine. I'm about to beat you guys to the finish line. Said I'm prime time, yeah. You working part time.
Welcome back to XCalibur Pit School in Mooresville, North Carolina. Here on ADSN, Talk About Sports. We're talking about NASCAR here this afternoon, folks. And we've got Pedro Martinez Jr. here with us, along with William Wilson and Jeff Taylor. And guys, a lot of cautions at Daytona this past week. What do you think we can do to maybe eliminate and have lesser cautions when we go back to Daytona and when we go to Talladega?
Nothing. That's Daytona, Talladega. That's plate racing. That's 200 miles an hour from 3 inches apart. That's what you get from the beginning of time in Daytona until we're all dead, gone, and rotten, and your grandson's watching NASCAR, they will be wrecking in Daytona.
And let's be real, that's what the fans want to see.
Yeah.
They want to see the big ones. And what got me, though, was, and I'm curious how the rest of the season plays out. You know, the stage racing, while you love it, is it really worth that many points and really worth tearing up cars to win a stage race?
That, to me, was...
Because that first stage, that wreck at the end of the first stage took out a lot of good cars. And my question is, you're going to get some points. I get it. I understand it. But the Daytona 500, you want to get to the end of the race. I mean, that's the sole purpose, is to win the race. The stage racing, you know, especially at Daytona, Talladega, you're going to tear up some cars.
I'll tell you, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. comes out of Daytona as much as he gained on plate tracks last year at Talladega and Daytona, winning those two races. He comes out of Speed Weeks as the biggest dummy in Daytona, because he, you know, how many cars did he wreck? Thursday he wrecked about two or three
on Thursday,
right on the left rear of them, and
it was nine, I think.
And just like you said, Jeff, the end of those segments were just plain idiotic.
Right.
But I don't think I don't blame that on stage racing. I blame that again.
That's on the drivers.
Right. It's inexperience. It's the car. I mean, those cars were dancing like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers on the track. I have never seen cars, when you look at the rear view of the cars, dancing around like that ever in my life. This was something new to them, and it was happening at 200 miles an hour. So that's a whole different thing for them.
I think the biggest thing that we see now is that everybody's antsy to race, because if you win a race, you make the playoffs.
Right.
Guaranteed. You know what I mean?
True.
I mean, that's
absolutely.
it. And everybody at the end of the segments are pushing it, because the more points you accumulate, and say you missed on winning a race, those points add up at the end.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
And I'd be and like me as a fan, because I'm no longer on pit road, as a fan, I loved it. I love stage racing. I love to see him going all at it. The only time I got really upset is when Kurt Busch went out. That's when I got.
But really and honestly, when would you have ever cared about lap 60 and lap 120 in the Daytona 500?
Yeah, because you know what would happen? They did like Matt Kenseth used to do all the time.
Hang around.
He goes to the back of the track. And he doesn't race to the last 50 laps, and it's just boring. And again, we've talked about before, with millennials, you got to give them some excitement. There was some excitement.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I was somewhat surprised, though, to see him racing that hard, guys, at the stage racing, because like I said on last show, to me, stage racing, I get it. It's great. It's fantastic. We get to the other races. This is a Daytona 500. Yeah. As a crew chief with the new pit rules, and then the down all the changes of the car and stuff. My whole idea was, let's just get to the end. Let's get to the end of the race, and let's work toward that, and maybe not worry about the stage racing as much at Daytona.
Right. But when I was on pit road, I only cared there was a Daytona 500 before the green flag dropped. Once the green flag dropped, it was a race, and I worried about it being the Daytona 500 at the end. Between then, I wanted to win this race. That's all I cared about. I wanted to win the race, win. I want to have the best pit stops. When I came in, I wanted to do my job. When Pedro comes in, he wants to make sure he does his job. That's what he's thinking about. You know,
I love stage racing because we do pit stops, you know? So I'm always looking forward to that. I mean, it's changed a little bit this year, but, you know, because when you go to Daytona and Talladega, you know, if no wrecks happen, we don't do pit stops. Basically, you just put gas in the car always. Yeah. There's no exciting for us big crew members.
Let me ask you.
And there's no bonus money.
Exactly.
There's no bonus money for getting spots.
Let me ask you this, and Alan, you may have gotten into this. Pedro, like, with the new rule changes and everything in terms of pit stops, and you had some chance. How long did it take you to get comfortable? I mean, are you still comfortable with them? Did it take a little while, one or two stops, and we're back in the flow, or are we still not there yet in terms of, you know, what the new rule is?
Oh, definitely, we're still not there yet, because I guess there'd be a bunch of gray areas that we have to work on, when to pick speed up and stuff like that, and what can we do, what can we not do, and basically pit road's a mess right now, honestly. Okay. And it's not like we used to take a break after the off season and just go on with our business and then come back to it, but now you have to learn a lot more. It's just like starting school in kindergarten, you know, work your way back up to you graduate high school.
One of the things that we didn't talk so much about last week with the pit changes, you know, we talked about the reduction in the number of guys that can go over the wall, and the gas man not being able to really do anything other than fuel the car. But they touched on it in the broadcast Sunday, and I want to ask you about this, Pedro, and I think William, as a former jack man, you can talk to this too. The air guns. First off, what was the rule change? Why did it come about, and how did it affect pit stops and the speed of these stops?
Well, we went to a new gun. It's Paoli. It's provided by NASCAR.
It's a spec gun
It's
now.
Spec gun, stock, everything. Everybody runs the same gun, all throughout the both series, Xfinity and Cup Series. And it's just, I think teams got too antsy and they highly over-engineered everything, and the smaller teams weren't able to keep up with it. So
I mean, they were literally spending $100,000 on air gun technology. I
Yeah.
heard
I heard up there some teams are spending $2-3 million.
millions.
Millions, yes.
Yeah,
Wouldn't surprise me.
absolutely. Yeah, you know, because they went this year's I think it's the 500 psi gun, right?
No, they have a set on the regular is 125 pounds of air. Yep.
Okay.
So what it literally would do, I would think, William, is with all of this, in a sense, it takes some pressure off the jackman now, because the jackman doesn't have to be so quick to get around. I mean, if you go from a pit stop that's 11 seconds, they're changing 4 tires and fuel in 11 seconds, and now you make it 17, 18, 19 seconds. It seems like you can concentrate a little bit more on what you're doing. Not that we see a ton of mistakes from jackmen, but it seems like it would take some pressure off.
Actually, no, because the jackman now has to index a tire.
Exactly.
So they're trying to speed everything up, because when the lug nuts come off and the tire gets pulled, jackman has to run over and put the tire on. Usually for this, on the right side, jackman indexes the right front. He becomes a carrier now.
Right.
So now he's trying to get the car up as fast as he possibly can to go to
That's true. So now the
do
jackman's
another jack.
carrying a tire.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
So now, as a jackman, I've got to do more work. I got to make sure I do my normal job that I've been trained to do since starting to do this. And now, like I said, I've got to make sure that I'm indexing. I got to make sure I slam that tire on properly. So I'm doing another man's job now at this point, and I have to try to do it as quickly as I can. I got to make sure I don't sling that tire and hit Pedro. I got to make sure I get stuff out of his way, and make sure I get the truck down or the car down and get around in time to do it all again on the other side. So I actually have a lot more work.
Everybody got 2 jobs. Everybody has 2 jobs now.
Except the gas man.
Except the gas man. Except the gas
The
man.
gas man can go to sleep. He just prop him up and push him out there.
Exactly. You know, and it's they talk about safety. They don't want to have a lot of crew members on pit road at the same time where pit stops are going. But now it just comes to a factor where this is my 8th full season going in the Cup Series and Xfinity and trucks, but there's more jobs to do. So the safety factor, I don't know. My opinion is just still up in the air.
I thought it was amazing too that real quick. I thought it was amazing watching the broadcast. I'm not sure how many pit stops we actually saw on television, because, like you said, it's kind of a disaster right now. I'm not sure I saw that many when I was watching the broadcast.
Yeah, and it seemed like DW and all those guys kind of avoided even talking about it.
Right.
They didn't show us, like they didn't know how to explain it, so they just kind of you see half of this stop.
I don't know that they did. Yeah,
you would see half this stop, and then they move over to another car.
Or they'd show the pace car with the field. It was just where are they showing the guys coming over the wall? Let me ask you this too, real quick. With the new guns, so are they available to the shops? Because I know they bring them on race weekend and hand them out. Do the shops then have?
Each team is allowed to buy 2 practice guns.
Got it.
But then when you go to the racetrack, Paoli supplies the race day guns. So you can practice with them, but you can't take them to the racetrack.
Okay.
Which I think is smart, because otherwise you're going to get some crew chief or car chief going to figure out a way to get 15 more
Tweak it
PSI
just a little bit.
out. You're going to shave a tenth or a half a tenth off per tire. And, at Talladega, a tenth of a second is 3 positions on the track.
Right.
And
so that makes a difference.
I've got to say, to tie a bow on this, I don't like NASCAR mandating rules. I think they have too many. I actually think this one's a good one, and I do think it's going to help the smaller teams.
Absolutely.
Oh, agreed.
And everything's electronically, I guess, tracked and everything. So we were talking about the air pressure. If you go over past 125 pounds air, they will come down and give you a warning. And then the second time, I don't know what the penalty is, but they will penalize you.
Really? Wow.
They probably bring you in for either drive-through or have to sit on pit road for 15
Yeah,
seconds.
That's what I would think.
Well, Pedro, we really appreciate you being here with us this afternoon. You got to get to work, so we're going to let you go, but thanks for being here with us on Talking About Sports.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Pedro.
Stay safe out there, brother.
Stay safe.
Yeah, Pedro's going to get back to work. We're going to get break in here, but we're going to come back to XCalibur Pit School here in Mooresville, North Carolina, with more Talking About Sports here on ADSN.
My lips on this one. Yeah. Yeah. Let's go. been sunny all week. The weatherman said today's almost gonna be as hot as this beat. Plus the words that I speak. I got out of the shower, hit the barbershop, and got in the seat. They talking about the game from last night and placing bets on who gon' win tonight's fight. I got out of the chair, fresh to death. Look down, check my phone, cause I just got a text. My man's at the car wash, said it's gonna be on tonight. There's a party, and it's gonna be tight. I ain't gotta be told twice. Went and got me some rest, cause it's gonna be one of those nights. Can already see it. Text again, say you saw one I slept on and a best friend. When the sun's bright and the wind don't blow, you really hope that tomorrow comes slow. Yeah, I ain't got a care in the world, just got paid. Got the slick shades and the fresh fade. We gon' have a good time, everybody keep it tight. Get right, keep it moving all night. Yeah, get my dance on. Yeah, come on, come on, come on. Yeah, let's go. Check. It's almost 10, the sun's gone, but it's still hot, and my phone's been ringing non-stop. My dog pulled up in the coupe, push the button and there's air where there used to be a sunroof. Yeah, we're stunting hard, switching lanes on the highway. Get to the spot and the line's down the block. Not a problem when you flow like this. Dap the bouncer while the valet park the whips. The DJ's dropping those hits, and these chicks look like...
Hi, I'm Chuck Efaw. Welcome to XCalibur Pit School. Let's take a tour. So over here is some of our tires laid out that we'll go through for practices. They continuously get re-glued throughout practices as we're using them up. We lay out about 50 sets of tires a day, and we'll go through those 50 sets twice, sometimes 2.5 times every day, which is about 125 pit stops a day. Over here we use our pit stop cart. It's kind of a little bit of a pit box. Conveniently right above you is all of our win banners for the last 4 years that we've been here. We have about 47, 48 wins and 2 championships. We've got Ortho Carolina. We have our certified athletic trainers in here doing treatment on some of our guys. We also have our film room right in there, and the guys have a couple of the pit stops being recorded. They can go in there and watch that stuff all the time. It records 24/7. We try to go through and practice for the track we're going to go to, and we try to practice the situations of pitting. So like last week at Daytona, it wasn't really about us changing tires. It was about us just making sure lug nuts were tight and the trucks went back out in the draft, or the cars went out back in the draft and didn't lose the draft. This weekend it's about getting after it and changing tires in Atlanta. We will pit in Atlanta. It ain't gonna be like Daytona. When caution comes out, you better be ready to pit. I'm already far away from the car. This is our Xfinity roster for Atlanta. This is our truck roster for Atlanta. So everybody's looking to see who's going. These just came out, so everybody looks to see if they're making the cut for the week or not. All of our practice jacks lined up for everybody to be able to use. This is a stationary hub, so it's basically like having a race car here without having a full race car, so people can come over here and get a good rhythm at hitting lug nuts. This is our Gen 6 Cup car. We practice on this whenever we have the Cup teams getting ready to go. So over here is a little rotisserie, almost looks like a smoker, but really what it is it's a lug nut glue cleaner. So we put the used lug nuts down in there, and we tumble them and clean them and get all the excess glue off there, so we can reuse those lug nuts about 5 times. If you had to buy them lug nuts new, they're about $1.29 a piece. We go through anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 lug nuts a week here. And that's a quick tour of XCalibur Pit School. We appreciate your time, and thank you for coming.
You got to see Pedro in action there and the folks here at XCalibur Pit School. I think we got to change it to Speedy Martinez instead of Speedy Gonzalez. But,
Speedy Gonzalez.
You know, you work up an appetite whenever you do these pit stops like this, William. I'm sure you know that. Don't forget our friends at Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. We're going to get into the wings and everything a little bit later, but that's a good place to go after you sweat and work it out at
you know,
pit
after
training.
you've been carrying those tires on there, getting your wings tired, you need to eat some wings to replace them.
Well, you might be wondering who this is sitting next to us right now, and it's Chuck Efaw, and he runs everything here at the XCalibur Pit School. And are these guys doing a good job or what?
Well, I'll tell you, it's hard to focus this way and not want to turn your head and see how they're doing and see how to critique them and make them better at doing this. We definitely find a lot of challenges this year with a lot of different rules that are happening. You know, sounds like they had a little bit of a little hiccup on the left rear.
A good thing you weren't watching.
Yeah, but it's so hard because we used to finish the same time on the left sides, and now it's a little bit of a challenge because the way we have to do this being down a man. So it's a little different.
Well, Chuck, I'll tell you, while they've done a couple of pit stops since we've been doing the show here, I've felt a lug nut hit my shoe twice now, and I keep wanting to make sure it doesn't hit me in the nose or in the head. But so they're doing a good job, but I might have to sign a release or something before we get out of here.
Yeah, let me go grab that real quick.
You might want to get it before they do another pit stop.
Yeah, I want to do a stop. I want to see if I still got it.
I want to see you do it with the suit on.
That's must-see TV right there.
Hey,
must-see TV.
I have no problem. We appreciate you guys coming and we come back here and do this another time. We'll do this where we'll let the cameras run a little bit, and maybe we'll let a couple crew guys up here and we can critique you guys and let you. We'll give you a quick rundown, and we'll let you guys do some right side stops and see what we have.
Yeah, man. 'Cause I haven't jacked the truck since '08.
There you go.
So when I was on pit road, we had 7 guys.
Yes.
You know, then they dropped to 6, which made sense because you didn't have the catch can guy.
Yep. Everybody thought that would never make it, and you know when NASCAR decides to make a change, they're a little hard headed. They make a change. Most of the time it stops. And it stays that way. So you're right. When we got rid of the catch can man, you know, they did that for a little safety issue. You had a guy with his back to the car can come in beside him or come in right behind him, and if they don't stop good, you know, the guy is blindside and get hit and get hurt. So I think that was a good move. It took a little bit to get used to them new cans, but like you said, you know, they dropped a man there and we moved on.
Yeah, but I remember seeing a lot of guys get drugged down pit road trying to pull that catch can out too.
Yes,
yep. That's probably a good idea.
Now, Chuck, with the new pit rules, that kind of had to re-energize what you guys are doing here because everybody's learning now.
Yes, it has. You know, I've done this for right around 19 years, and not that you get bored with it, but it becomes such a norm, and so you take it for granted that you're just running through drills, and you lose a little focus sometimes, and this kind of has re-energized me a little bit, and in a good way, because it evens out the playing field on pit road for everybody. And for me, I think it gives everybody here an equal opportunity on being able to fight for some of those positions. In December, I was going back and watching a lot of film, and I drew up a lot of different ways we could do this, and we actually had about 4 or 5 different ways we started learning this 5-man until we figured out a groove that worked best for everybody, and then we really had to crack down. And we worked hard over the off-season in December when we used to lay low and let everybody recover and be ready in January, but we couldn't do that. We had to be aggressive and go after it.
Chuck, let me ask you this, and we asked Pedro about it too. So with the new rule changes, Daytona was Daytona. How many races are we really looking at before you think everybody's going to be completely like comfortable, or will they?
The 5th race in 2019.
You know, all these years, yeah, it'll be a little while.
I mean, is it going to be a while?
It'll be a little while. And here's what I see happening. Daytona, you had the cars sucked down to the track so much, and the way they had to go through inspection, the cars had to be, you had to have the chains loosened because they had to be up on blocks to go through inspection.
Right.
So the cars turnaround had to be real low, so you had to have cars pumped up twice. And we're not used to that.
But it had to be hard to get that rear tire off with the clearance too, right?
It is hard.
Yeah.
So everybody had to be really patient and expected. You know, it was right around 20-second stops on a lot of teams. What's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of failures before there's a lot of what we call fast stops, the new generation of fast stops. Because we've been trained to go fast all these years, and it's progressed from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s to what we had last year. You won't have that now. We're talking about 10.5, 11-second pit stops. Now we're into 18, 19-second pit stops. So these guys have been programmed to go fast. Now you're trying to ask an athlete to slow down. So it's the guys that will go out and do the fundamentals and do the fundamental, be sound in check and not make their mistakes, that will be the ones to get into the 14s and 15s on their pit stops. And I think that's going to be the new 11-second pit stop, a 14 to 15-second pit stop.
Yeah, I was saying that last week. I said you're looking at like this, a super duper pit stop would be a 14.5.
Yes, I believe so. And then you're going to have a lot of teams that try that. And now the recovery of mistakes, it's going to be 20, 21 seconds when you make that mistake. You throw in an adjustment stop, and if you run a 16-second pit stop, and the way you have to do the adjustment with someone else doing it, because that rear carrier is not there anymore.
But we didn't see a lot of wedge adjustments, obviously, at Daytona, like you're going to see this weekend at Atlanta.
Yes, with tire fall off and everything. So you're going to find stops. If you run a 14.5-second stop with no adjustment, it'll be 18 with an adjustment. And then the teams that make the adjustments are going to lose all that track position, and it's going to hurt them. So the teams that show up prepared and they're ready to do just minor tire pressure adjustments and leave the wedge wrenches alone, it helps they have their own track bar adjuster in the car. But you're going to see a difference of the guys that show up prepared and the guys that need to make adjustments.
We talk about getting comfortable and how long it might take. Let me ask you this. With 5 guys going over, and some guys, they might pit a truck, an Xfinity car, and what are we looking at in terms of wear and tear? Are these guys just going to get worn down so much over the season, or do you have to adjust how you're going to maybe you won't pit 2 cars over a weekend?
You're going to see a little bit of all of that. There's a lot of
teams at Daytona actually did pit trucks and Xfinity to get practice.
They did that, so it's a catch-22.
Right.
You do it to get the practice, but yet you also, I know a lot of Joe Gibbs racing cars aren't going to let their Cup guys pit a lot of Xfinity or any truck whatsoever, so their guys are ready for Sundays. So what you're going to have, I think, early on is, our bodies are programmed to do one thing when we train this.
Right.
I change rear tires, so I'm programmed when I get down on the right rear, I'm dynamically going left. That's what I do. So if I naturally have to stand up and do an adjustment, I'm not used to that. So different things, ligaments, tendons, muscles are going to be sore until you get used to that. So some of that will change until it becomes a norm. So it's challenging. The gun deal's different because trucks, we do the 5-man, but we can run normal standard guns.
I've got to think, though, that if they make any sort of change, that it's going to be to let that gas man do it. I don't understand that.
Yeah, that is a little challenge. I think what they're trying to do is to save the cost. So a lot of teams went out and got a lot of athletic guys to go out and do the gassing, and then those guys would be creative with pulling tires, pulling right front, pulling left rear, and trying to get a half a can in there.
Yeah, I think the only thing you really can let a gas man do anyway is probably a wedge adjustment. If he can reach, that's really all he can do.
Right now
you can't let go of the fuel set.
Yep. Right now, all they can do, a gas man can literally gas the car and they can kick the left rear tire down, and that's it.
I'm just saying to make any adjustments to that rule. I mean, there's still not a whole lot of stuff a gas man can do because he can't let go of the fuel delivery system. Now, here's what I want to know is what happens when they have to change a battery. That's going to make you're looking at. That's a long stop anyway, just because of where the battery's located. So now you got these guys doing these dual jobs, and it's not like you practice. It's not like you're going to practice every week on how to change the battery so you get fast. That throws off your whole choreography for that stop.
It does. And I think if you're worried about a battery, what's going to happen is they're going to come down pit road, and they're going to address that issue first. And more than likely, you'll have just the rear changer go over to hit the lug nuts off, and maybe the jackman. But then you'll see a couple road crew guys go over to change that battery out. And then when they service the car and get it changed back, you'll see that car leaving and coming back down to change right side tires.
So now it'll be 2 stops.
I think so.
Well, we've got lots more to talk about here on Talking About Sports, and Chuck's going to stick around with us, so you do the same. We'll be back right here on ADSN.
We're going to go a full timeout. All I got to say is it football season yet? This stuff is too good to pass up. There's so many things that have to go right in a no-hitter.
A huge game changer.
I would have won the Powerball like 6 times. It's Kevin Casey here, and this is your podcast, Talking About Sports, the Carolina's own sports talk show.
With you was grind time. Yeah, I never switch sides. Worry about me and mine. I'm about to beat you guys to the finish line. Said I'm prime time. Yeah, you working part time, and I'm ready anytime. I can just look at you and tell. I put it with you was grind time. Yeah, I never switch sides. Worry about me and mine. I'm about to beat you guys to the finish line. Said I'm prime time. Yeah, you working part time.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports here from XCalibur Pit School. Glad to have Chuck Efaw with us here from XCalibur, along with Jeff Taylor and William Wilson. And we're going to have some good food, folks, from Dilworth Neighborhood Grill, as we always do. They cater, folks, as you'll see. I think the food's going to come in here. It's great. We thank James and all the folks from Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. They always take such good care of us. And I know, William, you love the wings.
I do. I love the wings and the nachos.
Yeah, they can cater NASCAR parties, your fantasy baseball drafts. We're going to have the NFL draft coming up soon. You can check it all out at Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Be sure to check them out on the web or call anytime, and they'll be glad to cater an event here at XCalibur.
Yeah, that sounds good. We actually do a lot of corporate events here, and we do cater in some food. And now that you guys are here, and after I taste some of these wings, we're probably going to give them a call for. We got a corporate event coming up in a couple months, so we'll have to reach out to Dilworth.
Well, they've got great food, so be sure to check out Dilworth Neighborhood Grill, folks. Let's get back to Daytona a little bit here, the Xfinity race. 5 overtimes. I am so glad that the overtime line went away on the back straightaway. The race should be decided at the start-finish line, but unlimited attempts. What do you guys think about that?
I love it. I love it.
I agree.
Because these guys have busted their butts all week to get ready. These guys have driven all week. You know, they've been practicing. They've been working all race. The fans have paid hard-earned money to come to the track. They deserve to see a race in on a checker flag, not a yellow flag.
I'll agree. Woo, those are hot. I agree. I loved it. I thought, here we go again. Here we go again. Line it up. Let's do it one more time. So I thought it was great. The product was so much better, allowing them to race it out.
Well, I think it's a lot easier to explain to people now because you've got unlimited attempts. It's just like a college football game. You can have 6 overtimes in a college football game. And the other thing is, again, you get rid of that stupid line over on the back straightaway.
Right.
You get back to the white flag, you cross the start-finish line, next flag ends the race.
Yes, I agree with that. I think the challenge is you got to make it a little more simplified for the fans to follow along and understand. Because if you don't feel like you understand it, you normally don't become a fan of the sport. So that helps. Yes, they tear up a lot of race cars doing all those extra overtime starts. But
that's on the drivers.
But we're there to race, and we're there to finish a race, and I fully agree. And I think some of that stuff helps, like Daytona, that helps some lower-funded teams to have a chance to win one of them races. I think that's a good thing because the rest of them guys get aggressive. These guys get a chance to move in the top 10, and they actually see something they may not see throughout the rest of the year. They get a taste of victory, and you see some of them lower-end teams getting in the top 5, and I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. Plus, you get the chance. This starts playing around with fuel strategy. Some of these guys are like, we could play around. Well, you knew you had 2 restarts. You knew you had enough fuel. Now, like I said, we ended up doing 5, 6, 7
restarts.
They
were guys running out of gas.
They were sweating. Yeah, guys did run out of gas.
Now, I want you guys to explain this one to me because we've talked a lot about the ride height rule, but following the truck race on Friday night, NASCAR penalized the number 41 Ford of Ben Rhodes for post-race height measurements being outside the allowed tolerances. How much more vague could that be? I mean, explain that to me. It seems like to me if it's whatever it is, 1 centimeter, I mean, what's the tolerance? Do they go over that with you, or how does that work?
Well, I used to be a road crew member, and we used to run them all. We used to have height sticks. So what it was
which
corner
this is
sticks.
Literally the roof height.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Yes. So what they'd always had was we had 2 height sticks at the front corners, and then we had 2 height sticks at the back. And on the trucks, I believe they may use them at the spoilers. And then they have an overall height when the car's sitting there in tech and it comes down. And what it is they give them like an inch of green up or down. Okay, so they give them that 1 inch they can be when they start the race, when they roll through.
Huh?
And then
those are mild, okay.
When they come back in after the race for post-race, they give them like an extra 1/4 inch for everything to settle a little. And they do let them put the air pressures back to recommended pressures to roll through there. But there's a lot of variables that happen to that stuff. So it's a fine line.
But here's my, sorry to interrupt, but here's my question. And you talk about just trying to draw people into the sport. Okay, you've run however many laps. Isn't the car naturally, the truck naturally going to like change?
Adjust
I mean, and if we're talking an inch or two, seriously, I mean,
Well, a lot of times, I don't want to speak a whole lot on it. I actually pit on that number 41 ThorSport Ford, driven by Ben Rhodes.
Wow.
I've been on. You guys didn't know that, did you?
No, that worked.
So that worked out. Really good.
We did.
Yeah, we did. We talked briefly.
Did great job.
What happens is you want to hit your minimums because you want less drag on the vehicles.
Right.
So normally most teams, when you come in your first pit stop, you tend to take a round and a half out of the rear of your vehicles. I don't remember what we did on that truck, but everybody has that limit how much they can take out, and they know normally one round can be a quarter inch depending on the springs and shocks and everything, but you know your limit and you try to get that out the first stop so it's out of the way because it takes longer. Plus you want to run the whole race at your minimum, and I'm not sure what happened there, but obviously it looks like NASCAR wasn't happy with it.
I still don't like, though, that if you get through pre-race tech, and I've heard all the stories about Darrell Waltrip. They had with Junior Johnson, they had BBs in the roll cage, and they'd let them out, and they'd go all over the racetrack at Martinsville so the car would be lighter. But to me, I'm like, so in other words, I'm saying there are things that can be done during the race to make the car or truck not the same as it was during pre-race tech. But, I've always looked at it from a short track level, that if you get through pre-race tech,
Game one.
Yes.
Yeah, but the problem is, at a little Saturday night short track racing, you don't have the technical expertise and the money you have on these. And once you get to the big guys, remember they used to play the jack and bolts.
Yep.
So they knew they would break.
Yep.
That way, it broke. It's not our fault. So it drops the car down.
Oh, I've got another one. You remember? You remember when Jimmy Spencer won those 2 restrictor plate races at Daytona and Talladega in '94?
Yep.
I've always heard a story that there's is it an oil cooler or something that's behind the driver?
Yep.
And it's got a lid on it.
It's got a lid, and the lid would always come up.
The lid on that car, he could move it or whatever to where what it would do, and you wouldn't think this as much, but it would let air in that would give the car a little bit more downforce or whatever he needed, and you could just pull that. And that's what I heard.
Yep.
And whether or not it's true, but I've heard it from a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of them used to use that, and they would have. They'd have.
Then the next year,
they went to bolts.
The next year, Brett Bodine was driving for Junior Johnson.
Yep.
And they fined them at Daytona because they changed the rule.
Yep, they changed the rule, and now all those oil tank lids actually have to be bolted in. So there's not a way. Not
no
a way
moving
for a
now.
driver.
Well, in NASCAR, your team owner pays your crew chief for 2 things: win races and find out how to get as close to the rule breaking without doing it.
Right.
So if this is the rule, if this is our minimum, I need you within a 1 millionth, but just be on the good side, but be as close as you can to bad.
Who says if you're not cheating, you're not trying?
But not cheating, you're just trying to find a competitive edge.
Well, the other side is, goes back to if you get through pre-race inspection and you pass through pre-race inspection, you get on the starting grid. Every other team has passed it. You all have the same adjustment tools. So to some point, it should be to their advantages. If you want to take the more time on pit road to make them adjustments within those, then maybe you don't have that post-race.
How's that laser work? Isn't there like a laser now that they use now?
Yeah, they have a new one. I believe it's called the Hawkeye.
Mm-hmm.
It was used in the they've had it at the NASCAR R&D Center. I don't know a lot about it, but basically they have a black tent, so it's all enclosed. And they roll the car in there, and they have a few people in there, so it's all black light stuff and lasers.
Yeah.
They're going to make the Xfinity cars do that this week in Atlanta. I just found out.
Oh, they didn't do it in.
They didn't do it in Daytona. And from what I heard today from one of the team owners, I won't specify who, but he says only 20% of the Xfinity teams have even passed that Hawkeye inspection at NASCAR Tech inspection place. So it's going to be pretty interesting getting down there to see how many cars get through tech and how many cars don't get through tech in the Xfinity Series, because those guys don't have as many people with that roster challenge of how many people can be there. So it'll be interesting.
Chuck, we really appreciate you letting us be here tonight at XCalibur Pit School. I know you guys are busy. You're getting guys shoved off to Atlanta this weekend and a little bit more pit practice, but we really appreciate you being on the show tonight. I want to give you this Dilworth Neighborhood Grill T-shirt for being here with us.
Well, thank you very much. You took the one I was. That's the one I wanted.
So we're going to take a break here. You're watching.
You get around us, you better eat quick.
On ADSN. Thanks, man.
We're talking about sports on 8 and We're talking about sports at ADSN. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yep.
We're talking about sports. Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports. Talking about sports. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
What would I do if I could celebrate like an NFL player?
Well, my celebrations have been known to be pretty wild already. I took my whole team sliding through the grass at Charlotte.
I don't celebrate much.
And then you know how they grab the ball and like they spin it or they spike it? I've always wanted to like grab my helmet and do that. Like, woo.
Well, there'd be no dancing for sure because I can't dance.
Well, I'm not a dancer, so I wouldn't be dancing, that's for sure.
I'm not a good dancer, but I would dance if I won the championship, absolutely.
Will I twerk? No. I know that's what you were thinking.
I can dance. I can do it all. So if we're at Homestead, I promise you I'll put on a really good show.
I like doing my donuts, and that's about it.
I mean, the biggest celebration is the smoky burnouts and just wearing out the tires, creating as much smoke as possible.
DW used to do the icky shuffle, and then he'd grab the helmet and he'd do like one of these. And
we're okay with that.
Yeah, I think those guys in the NFL, some of their celebrations they got moves that I couldn't do.
I'm not as good as those NFL guys. They got all kinds of moves.
When you get to that top level of sports, it's an accomplishment to not only score a touchdown, but to win a game and to let those guys have some fun with it, because that's really what sports is all about.
I'd go dance on the top of everybody's holler with the trophy.
You know what? I think I'm probably just going to try to get a kiss and a hug from my wife and my daughter and drink a beer too.
It takes the cake, right? I mean, how could you top that?
Back to talking about sports here, and we thank our good friends at Dilworth Neighborhood Grill for all the great eats that they give us every week in catering here at XCalibur Pit School this week. And guys, before we talk about Atlanta, to kind of wrap up Daytona a little bit, Darrell Wallace Jr., we talked about him a little bit last week, but is it safe to say, Jeff, that he exceeded expectations? Or was it expected?
I don't think we knew what to expect. I think he did exceed expectations, but I think what he did in that race itself, bringing that car home in second place, representing, Petty Motorsports, and we talked about it a little bit, William, in the break here, whatever. It was almost historic. I mean, it's historical to see that and to think about Wendell Scott and Petty Motorsports in that 43 car, and I was impressed.
Yeah, you'd have never thought in a million years that you'd see an African-American driver in the 43 car. No one ever followed the sport would have thought they'd ever seen that. Now, as far as did he meet our expectations, Daytona and Talladega is just hard. You just want to make through. You can finish 43rd. You can do everything right and finish last. You can do everything wrong and almost finish first.
Right.
So it just really, I don't think we'll really know how well he's doing till he gets to those mile-and-a-half tracks.
That's where I was going. You look at Atlanta this weekend, Las Vegas, all that coming up. I'm kind of the same way. You hate to say that about the biggest, most iconic race, the Daytona 500. That I don't want to say that it's easier, but it's more of an even playing ground as far as the cars go. But you're really going to see, I think, starting this weekend, if they have turned the corner as a team.
Yeah, well, you win Atlanta, you survive Daytona. You survive Talladega. The other tracks you win. The setup's got to be good. The car's got to be right. Pit stops have to be right. You can't get caught in a draft. You got a great car, but you get caught in the middle, you get sucked up on both sides. That doesn't happen in Atlanta. So your talent has to show up there.
And don't forget, not only did Richard Petty Motorsports change makes to Chevrolet this year, but that car they're working out of a little part of the shop over at Richard Childress Racing, and they've got Earnhardt Childress engines. A big weekend for Richard Childress and that entire organization.
Absolutely. That was great. Those alliances matter. Martin Truex Jr., that Denver racing team, they did okay when they torn that lines with Joe Gibbs Racing, Martin Truex wins the championship.
It was very interesting at the end of the race. Okay, so you get 3, 43, and the 11. And Daryl Waltrip on the broadcast goes, how historic to see the 3, the 43, and the 11. I'm like, boy, come on. Is the 11 really that historical? Well, the 3 and 43 I get. Come on, Daryl.
To the 3 and 4,
come on, Daryl.
The number of wins when you count the 11. I mean, it's there, but it's not on par with the 3 and 43. That brings up something else a little bit. Again, tying up Daytona a little bit. Denny Hamlin, what is with this guy?
He needs to be quiet.
Yeah, Kevin Harvick this week said he needs to learn to keep his mouth shut.
I mean, listen,
or is he playing the bad guy? Is he embracing that role, which he sort of skirted around for years, but it seemed like after Martinsville with the Chase Elliott thing, it's like, all right, I'm all in on this.
Well, history has shown, Kyle Busch shown being the bad guy can make you relevant.
Right.
People right now, if Denny wins a race, doesn't win a race, unless you're one of his fans, you really don't have any feelings towards it. Dale Jr. win a race, people care. If Chase Elliott when he wins a race, people care. If Denny wins a race, it's like, it's like Matt Kenseth winning a race.
Right.
But if he becomes a villain, now people either love him or hate him, but he's relevant now.
And I think the interesting part is we talk about Atlanta and going to Atlanta this weekend. I heard it say this is where the season actually begins.
Right.
This is where, in my opinion, like we've talked about, Daytona's a crapshoot. Anybody can win it. Anybody can go from first to last or whatever. I think it's going to be very interesting for NASCAR over the next few weeks because when you get to these mile-and-a-half tracks and you get to Fontana and Phoenix, we're going to see 15 cars run at the front. Mm-hmm. And the other ones are just going to be out there racing.
And you're going to see 5 that they're focused on.
And they're 5 exactly. And you can name them. You can name them. And what I'm hoping we see is that everybody's mentioning how Denny and Bubba got to bumping there at the end or whatever. I really hope we see some of this new blood compete and get up there and make it because I'd like to see some of these young guns get into it and give the Denny Hamlins and the Kyle Busches and the Jimmy Johnsons a run for their money. But listen, you've got they haven't repaved that track forever. Tire wear. This is where the season begins. This is where we're going to see the cream rise to the top. And Truex didn't have a real good speed weeks. Let's see what happens at Atlanta.
Go ahead.
Well, and William, you're going to see again. We've seen it a few times. This multi-zone tread tire, which has 3 different types of tread on it, and the reason being is it's going to spread out the fall off on the tire, but it's also going to help the car turn better in theory.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. But the fall off is still going to be the fall off. But you get a guy like Tony Stewart used to run a lot of toe in his car. He wanted to always feel the sensation of having to have the car turning left, even if he went down the backstretch. So he had a lot of toe out. So even when you put a compound like that on a tire, you can still blister it or still wear it out, a lot faster.
Because these tires are going to go
have your toe set up.
4 laps before they start really starting.
Yeah, I mean it's like Darlington. I mean the way Atlanta is now. That asphalt hadn't been paved in 21 years, and that makes it's just like Rockingham, Darlington. You got a lot of sand in that part of Georgia that kind of sandblast the tires, sandblast the front of the car, and if you ever wanted to see a NASCAR race on a 1.5 mile banked dirt track, Atlanta's as close as you'll get.
Absolutely. But back to what we were talking about earlier, I think with the going to Atlanta and all those types of things, I think what you're also going to see going to that type of track, because you were talking earlier, now I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Crap, I can't remember what I said. Keep on talking. I forgot what I was going to talk about now. We took so long.
I think the interesting part, too, will be, we've been here, and talking about the pit crews. You're going to see a lot of we're going to see a lot of pit stops.
Yeah,
those tires wear down, and so it'll be interesting
adjustments
to see. It'll be interesting to see if this race can be won or lost on pit road.
Again, you didn't see at Daytona a lot of those crew guys where in the last couple of years you saw the gas man take that big wrench and put it in to make a wedge adjustment on the car and turn it. Yeah. You don't see that at Daytona and Talladega. You're going to see that a lot now. And how these teams do that, how they try to do it, it's just like Pedro said, it's going to put a lot of emphasis on that rear tire changer. And he made a good point. everybody has got 2 jobs now, except the gas man.
Now I remember what I was going to say. You know, it's the young. We're having the young gun movement all over again.
Agreed.
Except now we've got a whole crop of Kyle Bushes. You know, when
at one time.
Exactly. You know, because Kyle just came in. Kyle, if he saw a 1/4 inch, he's going to take it. Now you got 7, 8, 9 guys that all do, and they're all buddies.
Yeah.
You know, that last young gun group that came with Ryan Newman and Dale Jr. and all these guys.
They were kind of
they were cool at the track. They were cool to each other, but they developed.
They didn't hang out. They didn't grow up together.
Exactly. They developed friendships over years. They developed respect for each other first. Then that turned into a friendship. These guys, they're all on Instagram together. They going on vacation together while they were in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series.
See if they still are in 5 years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or after Atlanta for that much.
I mean, you hate to say that, but it's going to be a big weekend in Atlanta. Of course, on Saturday, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series and the NASCAR Xfinity Series will be racing in a doubleheader, both on FS1, and of course the Cup race, the Poles of Honor QuikTrip 500 on Sunday at 2 at Atlanta. Jeff, I know you're going to skip out on us here on this last segment, but thanks for being here with us. What do you expect to see at Atlanta this weekend?
I expect to see a good race. I can't wait to see him run on that old surface. I'm gonna not really go out on a limb here. I think the 4 team gets the win. I think Kevin Harvick. You know, that's Jimmy Johnson. I think has won there the most, but I just think Harvick seems to perform well, and I think the Stewart-Haas disappointment at Daytona, they followed that with the win.
Well, we're going to get mine and Williams' picks coming up in the next segment, along with a special mystery guest. So stick around right here on Talk About Sports on ADSN.
How about my boy Jordan Anderson with a top 10?
We're going to go a full timeout. All I got to say is it football season yet? This stuff is too good to pass up. There's so many things that have to go right in a no-hitter. A huge game changer. I would have won the Powerball like 6 times. Kevin Casey here, and this is your podcast, Talking About Sports, the Carolina's own sports talk show.
Welcome back. Our final segment here on Talking About Sports. Talking about sports. I'm not even getting the name right, and I think it's because I'm a little bit nervous about this young gun movement that we got going on, William.
Oh yeah, I mean, apparently we took it from the track to the booth. Now we got these little young men up here that's going to take over our jobs.
This is my son Clinton. You want to say anything, Clinton?
No, I'm good.
Well, who's our friend here?
What's your name? Kenny. I mean, what? No, McKinley.
McKinley. Okay, good job there, Clinton. And we got a little bit more for you coming up here. I know you're hungry.
Word of advice, Clinton. Never forget a woman's name, and really don't forget her name in public. That never works out well.
I'll tell you, back in the old days, I got a trick for that, Clinton, that can get you the information that you need to know and get you out of trouble all at once.
Otherwise, you're going to end up back in the garage.
Well, that might be true. William, what do you think about this weekend? What do you see? We got Jeff. He thinks Kevin Harvick this weekend. What do you think we'll see? What's your pick?
I think that 41 car looked good. That 41 car looked good. I'm curious to see what the Fords look like, because they were really strong, obviously, at at Daytona. It's going to be interesting to see how they are at Atlanta. It's hard to go against Kevin Harvick or Jimmy Johnson, for that matter. But I think Kurt was so close to winning the 500 and not winning on a fuel or a caution. And I think he's got a little extra fire on his lit under him. But I'm telling you, man, I think one of these young guns are going to they're going to wreck some people out to get a win. It's either going to be, I'm telling you, the Blaney, and it may be Bubba. I think one of those two may, because they're just so aggressive. They're just so balls to the wall, and they don't care about anybody else on the track. They see one direction, and they still haven't learned to temper it down yet. But so I think it's going to be one of those two guys, unless it comes down to pit stops. If someone gets a bad pit stop, that's going to change everything.
Clinton, I see you pointing at the paper. What's your pick for Atlanta? Who do you think is going to win this weekend?
Ryan Blaney.
Ryan Blaney, not Chase. Well, I'll tell you,
He agreed with me.
I think that's pretty bold. And, you know, we talked about the unknowns at Daytona last week. I think the Chevrolets are still an unknown, especially on these mile and a halves. I think they're either going to be really good or they're going to be not so good. I don't think they're going to be middle of the road. I think the Toyotas will be strong. It's hard. You know, I came in thinking maybe Kevin Harvick, maybe Ryan Blaney, but I can tell you one thing. As good as Martin Truex Jr. was last year on those mile-and-a-halfs, I would expect he's going to run well. He's going to run in the top 5. Whether or not he wins or not, I don't know. I'm going to go with Martin Truex Jr.
And I don't think that's a bad call at all. But just something in my gut tells me why it's wonderful to be here at a pit crew school. You know, I'm back at home around my people, the guys that get dirty in the pits, the guys that really win races for people that don't get the kind of credibility they need to. So thank you for having us out here at XCalibur. But I think it's going to come down. Half this race is going to be about speed, and half is going to be about pit stops.
I agree.
Because there's a lot of fall off, so pit stops are going to be important. There's going to be a lot of them.
And it may be more than half.
Yeah, every time a caution comes out, these guys are coming in for 4 tires. They're going to be wedge adjustments, track bar adjustments, which they can do in the car now. There's going to be a lot of adjustments made to this track, try to chase the track. And I think the pit crews have never been more important than they will be this season, and especially at this track where their stops have to be on time. And now you look at these 20-second, 18-second stops, and Atlanta's not the easiest place to pass on. So I just think, and with these, couple that with the aggressive drivers, I think we're gonna have more wrecks than we normally have because we got so many young guns. A lot of guys are gonna come in first and come out 15th because of long pit stops. A lot of short stops we're gonna try to do. So we're gonna go out with blistered tires. We're gonna blow some right fronts. And it's gonna be a show.
Clinton, what do you got there?
Ryan Blaney led over half the Daytona 500, 118 laps, finished 7th. Who were you shocked not to see in the top 10 finish?
Hey, man, quit directing the show. We got to leave that to Kevin.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. Lots of people to thank, though, Clinton and William. Of course, our good friends at Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. If you're in Charlotte, if you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, it's right off Moorhead Street in uptown Charlotte. Stop by. We're going to enjoy some of this here a little bit later on. Of course, thank to our good friend Chuck Efaw and all the folks here at XCalibur Pit School for making us feel so at home here this evening on Talking About Sports. And finally, again, Kevin, we're thinking about you. This is your ship. We miss you, and we're praying for you and your family, and hope all the best for you. So,
yeah, we love you, big guy.
For William Wilson, for Pedro Martinez Jr., Chuck Efaw, and Jeff Taylor, I'm Alan Dietz and Clinton Dietz. Thanking you for watching us tonight here on Talk About Sports. We'll see you next week here on ADSN.
We clear?
Good.
I'm waiting for him to say clear. I'm like.